built my passion over time, which enables me to become a cockroach in those times of need. So you can build passion towards something as well, but again, make it passionate about solving a problem. Don't make it passionate about an idea or a solution like we just talked about.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Gray, and this is another episode of the Gray AF podcast. I was thinking right now that maybe I should come up with a new intro, because any time that I think of doing it differently, I end up saying the same thing all the time. But anyway, today we have another exciting guest on the podcast. This is one of those episodes that a lot of entrepreneurs out there are going to enjoy, because it's all about the startup journey, building your company, going through funding rounds and making things happen. So our guest today is Samer Saab. He's the co-founder and CMO of Wala platform. And these guys, they're doing incredible work in the fintech space, especially in Africa, which is exciting, but they're based in he is based in Cape Town. So actually I had a chance to go to their offices and had the podcast there, which was amazing. So Wala is a zero-fee money app on a mission to support you on your path to financial freedom. They believe that financial systems in this world are broken due to high fees, poor experiences, and inaccessibility. Especially if you're not in a third world country, these kind of things are a little bit complicated to understand. But from someone who live here and I've traveled a bit in Africa, it's the financial system it's broken. It's very difficult for people to trade. I mean, looking at all the technology that we have, I find it very, very annoying to see that just basic things don't work. Our remittances are a big thing, but then the fees are high. So it's exciting to see that these guys are actually solving this. So I don't want to spend too much time on the intro. I'll let you enjoy this podcast, but I hope you pick up a lot, just as I learned from this. Especially, I think this is going to give you an overview of what's happening in the fintech space and what other people are doing in Africa, and some challenges that most startups go through, and how Samer has managed to go through those, because this is not really his first startup. So as an entrepreneur out there, if you're listening to this, or an aspiring entrepreneur, I need coffee, I think you will learn a lot from this. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you want to check out Wala, go to getwala.com. It's getwala.com, and have a look at what these guys are building, which is already operating in Uganda, for example. Enjoy. No, your name.
Samer. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
like
so American.
Like hammer.
Right. Because it looks, what is that
It's a Lebanese name.
a Lebanese name? Okay, so I thought along those lines, but I was like.
So Samir is a different name. Samer is my actual name.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's the same name, just pronounced differently?
No, it's a different name. It's spelled differently in Arabic.
Oh, okay. So it's a different name. But so Samer is the American version, I suppose.
No, Samer is it's the Lebanese, the American version. Yeah. Okay. It's the actual pronunciation.
Right. So what were you doing before this?
Before this, I had another startup that I'd co-founded and ran for about 4 years. It was in the tech and design space, and what we built was a online community of furniture designers whose goal was to bring innovation to large furniture manufacturers. So bring innovation to the furniture market through a crowdsourced design process. So we would work with large furniture manufacturers like Herman Miller, who would put out design briefs to our community, and then the community would go out and they would collaborate and compete to create innovative new designs. We did a number of these projects. We created some great work, but we were unable to really sustain and continue to grow at a pace that enabled this to really take off. And so we shut down the company after about 4 years.
So what does it mean when you shut down the company? When you close, it means the investors lose their money and you...
Yeah, so in that case, we did have investors that lost money.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, just to put it out there, so venture capital, if the company doesn't do well, it fails, you lose money. So you had no personal debts to it that you had to pay back?
In that case, I had no personal debts to pay back to anyone. Mm-hmm. Correct. But I, at the same time, invested, the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own time and money and opportunity cost into that business. So, especially early on, taking no salary and then taking very little to no salary for several years, compared to salaries I could be taking in a job on the open market, amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I had a significant amount of skin in the game in working or trying to build this company, and then investors put money in as well to also have skin in the game, and then take a bet on us being able to succeed and achieve.
Right. And before that, what were you doing?
Prior to that, I was a management consultant. I did that for about 4 years at a firm called ZS Associates, based out of Chicago, Illinois, in the States. Our specific focus was on helping revenue side of the organization improve their operations and find opportunities to become more efficient and just streamline general processes, mostly in large sales organizations. So we had a lot of pharmaceutical clients, healthcare, but not just there as well.
Mm-hmm. At what age did you started working, man? You don't seem that old to me, but you have 4 years of work, 8 years of work already behind you.
Yeah, I think I've been working for about 10 years. I graduated college with a bachelor's and master's in industrial engineering in 2008 and began working. Actually, coincidentally, my first day of working a full-time employment was the day Lehman Brothers went under. I remember that very, very clearly, because just going up to that week, everything was really interesting in the market, and I was paying attention. And it was the news of the day at new employee orientation, and so it's very vivid. I can always remember that day. Yeah. Even to 10 years later. And now
I'm still trying to piece together what then when I was asking about your past, I was trying to piece together why you would end up in Africa trying to build a solution for Uganda.
Yeah, it's a good question. So my path and my passions have always been about sort of solving problems. That's what attracted me to consulting initially, was the opportunity to solve different problems, produce impacts in organizations, have a bunch of different experiences and different opportunities to come in to a wide range of situations and quickly diagnose issues and then find possible solutions. And that is very similar to what entrepreneurship is, and in a very localized level. So after my last company, Unbranded Designs, I was looking for opportunities and where to go next, because I still had a significant desire to apply my skills, but I wanted to find real problems to solve. And I didn't want to just start a company for the sake of starting a company. I wanted to find something that was a real issue that impacts a large number of people and try and help them in what it can be a simple, elegant solution. It was actually a few years before that where I met my co-founder. We were both working at a co-working space in Chicago called 1871. I was working on my startup, she was working on her startup at the time, and we became friends out of that. And she was already sort of exploring this opportunity. She was the one that had that initial expertise and had been working in the region, in Africa, I should say, in Uganda specifically, for some time. And it was the progress that she was making early on that really started to open up my eyes to not just the opportunity, but the problem that people face and the scale of the problem. And it excited me because not only is this a major problem that requires solving, but there are simple approaches that can be taken to actually address these problems and drive wide-scale change. And so I immediately became attracted to it. And so I started helping out and started to get my feet wet, and then became incredibly passionate about it as I started to further understand the people that we were trying to solve for, to understand the market, understand how incompetent or even predatory the others in the space are. Made me extremely passionate about trying to solve this problem, and it became something that was worth moving halfway across the world for.
Okay, that was enough.
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's... Having a passion to solve the problem is a different story, but like if you have to move to a different continent for it, and for a startup, obviously nothing is certain.
Yeah.
At what stage was it like? What was your mind frame like? Did you thought you were just gonna come here for a few months maybe and go back, or you really said, have you been here before prior to
that? So that is a good question. So we did not just get up and move. We actually had a few steps in the process that brought us here, and also for me, we had increasing points of validation for us. That indicated that what we were doing was correct. So from the start, our company actually began out of Trisha's work. Trisha's my co-founder. Her work with subsistence female farmers and providing universal basic income to help them escape extreme poverty. The progression from that, though, was identifying that these women who actually had access to a mobile financial service called Mobile Money, and who would receive a year's worth of income into a mobile wallet, would immediately choose to opt out of that mobile wallet by cashing out and then operating, or just keeping all their money, in cash in a lockbox under their mattress in their hut. So this cash issue was mind-boggling, and began the journey of understanding what this issue was, and we began to engage not only with these women but with people in urban areas, the middle class, the young, people who are actually already online and more technical, more educated, and started to understand, do people have bank accounts? Do they have or do they save? Do they keep their money in mobile wallets? What is the actual behavior? And we engage with these people digitally. We engage with them via Facebook Messenger, Skype, WhatsApp, and it began to start growing.
Right.
We had this massive influx of people that began to ask us questions.
But was that after the product, when it was launched already?
We had no products. We were just talking to people. We were just trying to get information, just trying to understand behaviors.
So how did you do that? Did you guys go down there, or you had like a research team?
This started when Trisha was on the ground in Uganda, and we also had a team member that was in Uganda, and he wasn't even a team member at that point. He was just someone who was helping us. But these conversations started to explode, and it became too much to even manage as one or two individuals. And so we aggregated all these conversations into first a Facebook group. And this Facebook group was initially supposed to be just an area where people could come and ask questions, and others could view or comment or provide their own responses to. Well, that Facebook group became 100,000 people in a month. Oh. And it grew eventually to about 400,000 people. And this was incredible because all we were doing was talking about financial behavior, savings behavior, budgeting, taking loans, using using bank accounts, gathering data on, why do people behave in specific ways or why don't they? And this was the first major indicator that we were onto something. We still had no idea what we were building in terms of a product, but we knew that we had struck a nerve. And it was actually at that time when we got into a Techstars program in London. So this was the Barclays Accelerator powered by Techstars. Yeah, we were building a product at that time, but it was not the current product. Well, our belief at that point was that we needed to provide financial guidance. And so we needed to build a personal financial management tool for the cash-based economy. So I think the common one that South Africans know is 22/7. And in the US, there's Mint.com. And there's a number of other ones. And the advantage that those applications have is that they can tap into your bank accounts. They can get your credit card data, and then they can aggregate all that stuff. That doesn't really work for a customer that doesn't use his bank account. So we were trying to build a product that allowed the cash consumer to better understand their spending behavior and create budgets. Right. So that was the first sort of indicator that we were doing something interesting. Well, the first two indicators. So the first, obviously, the community, and second, that we were in this Techstars program. And it was during that Techstars program that we continued to refine our work. So we were doing some work with Barclays and the local Barclays Africa team, so the APSA team in South Africa, and we were essentially had a deal in place. The goal was to, you start with this PFM, but you help people then get into bank accounts. You help them access an account that makes sense for them, that is priced properly, and then you get them to actually remain engaged.
And what did you think of a revenue model from that point?
We were at that point expecting to act as a lead generator.
Right.
So we would find people for banks, yeah. But through that program, we learned a number of things. One, it was a great program. We met fantastic people who had, though based in London, had just great expertise throughout the African continent, so people who had worked not only in South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, everywhere. And so we were able to get a lot of value from that, and so we were really grateful. But it was actually during that program that we had started to travel back and forth to South Africa and start to get a feel for being on the ground here. But the most important thing that we learned was that if we continue to push consumers to the same old bank accounts that already exist, then nothing is going to change. Because these consumers generally know these accounts exist. And these accounts, these banks, are the reason that we have an unbanked problem. Yes. And so that's when we started to realize that unbanked is the wrong word. And you're never going to solve the unbanked problem until we attack a much bigger underbanked problem. And the underbanked are the people that we define as people who actually have access to banking services, who could open an account, who actually may have an account. In South Africa, we actually classify someone who is more likely to have 3 bank accounts than 1 as being underbanked, because they don't use any of them.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And that's when we realized that we have to go this entire route. We need to figure out how we can provide financial services to consumers, have control over the entire experience, have control over the costs and the fees that the consumers pay, just everything. Because if we rely on the banks and whatever their products are, then we're going to, we're never going to be able to actually meet the needs of the consumers as we see. And that's when we actually had a deal with a different South African bank coming out of that. And shortly after, we decided we wanted to relocate to Cape Town because we knew about the abundance of fintech talent here. Yeah. And that became incredibly attractive to us as a place to build the company.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, man. It's like usually when people think about startups and building companies or founders, it's usually sold as, one day you just wake up with this brilliant idea and you start building it. But most startups actually that even end up being very successful is that, they start with one idea and they just, morph into so many different things until they find what, the best solution they could offer. So,
absolutely right.
So when you changed now, what happened to you? So you didn't build a product for your previous idea that you had?
So we built a PFM, but where we fell apart was that we didn't have the end of the experience that we wanted to offer. So we wanted to get people into banking and then let them access their banking services through the application. But what we immediately realized as we were building was that the banks on the back end were not going to allow us to do that. So we went the entire route to build our own banking experience, right, which is the Walla financial app.
So now, for someone who has been listening to this, they have no idea what product you ended up building now. So how do you explain Walla, the platform?
Yeah, so Walla is a financial application. So we're a smartphone app built on Android, and it's a platform that enables you to access all the financial products and services that you need. With one caveat, we are built on the blockchain. So we are offering. So we take a decentralized approach to financial services, and we intend to be able to bring you all of the financial services you need, but in a decentralized manner, which enables you to hopefully get access to more options and more control over your finances as well.
Right. So, and with that, did you had an idea of, did this have anything to do with the rise of cryptocurrencies and use of blockchain technology?
Absolutely, 100%. We continued to, when we got to South Africa, we continued to engage with the banks, the ones that we had partnerships with, not just in South Africa, but across the spectrum. And it continued to be the case that even though we were taking this new position where we were going to become the digital bank and have our own experience, have the customer relationship, banks were always going to be a rigid, in some cases inept, in some cases criminal, partner that would always hold us back. And for us, we'd long been keeping our eye and interest on the blockchain and crypto space. But for the longest time, our approach had been to keep that in our product roadmap to enable remittances when we get to the point where we have penetration in multiple markets to be able to offer that. It was probably early 2017 when we started to realize that there is a better fit for what we are doing with crypto than with banks. And one of the biggest reasons is that with Walla, we're trying to deliver a consistent user experience to someone, whether they are in South Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, wherever. We're trying to create one global experience the same way that you get with WhatsApp or Facebook.
Right.
And the only way to do that is with a currency that is borderless.
Okay.
Right? And there's no way to achieve that with on a continent with 54 different countries and 41 different currencies. And so it's actually embarrassing that it took us so long to realize that that was the absolute right way to go. But we live and we learn.
So, with that kind of the thing with that kind of concept of cryptocurrency, it's almost like a new money concept to a lot of people. And now, if you go to Uganda, I suppose that's even much more of a surprise. Like, what was the initial reaction from the consumer perspective? Like, how do they perceive it? How long does it take for an average customer to understand what it is and actually start using it?
It's a good question, because I think that when people think cryptocurrencies, our minds go to the crypto exchanges, the crypto prices,
right,
what you see on CoinMarketCap, and that's one view of the market, but that isn't really valuable to people that are using it. And so we haven't focused our users on what is the price, how does this work, what does it do, which we absolutely prioritize education, but what matters is being able to demonstrate that the currency has value. And the way that it has value is by being transactable, by being able to use it to obtain financial services. And that's what we have prioritized, is getting that activity from actual users, because that demonstrates that allows trust to build, customer sentiment to come into the token in the market. And that builds behaviors that we're trying to build. So I think the motivations are probably different versus other countries, other tokens, or currencies. And we believe that over time, through incentives, through good user experience, through unique utility that comes with a digital token, that customers will start to understand the real interesting value that, for instance, you or I might understand is available in cryptocurrencies beyond just a normal transactional.
But currently, how long is that taking, that process of education for a customer to understand?
I mean, a customer can get immediate utility, and so the risk is, I think, lower. So, for instance, a customer can open an application, they can purchase Dala, the cryptocurrency, and then they can transact with it by either sending it to someone else or by redeeming it for a value-added service like airtime data or electricity. That's a way in which they're getting actual utility immediately, and then it's relatively low risk, so it's transactional. That's what we focus on now, and we use this approach to allow them to feel comfortable with that, and then to try and attract them to that currency over time. And then the longer term step of building enough confidence and trust for a user that they put their entire savings in, that takes longer. But at the same time, we don't want them to do that yet, because it's a big leap for any sort of token, and I think Bitcoin even, right? Like, people should be hesitant about putting their life savings in any cryptocurrency at the moment. So we want people to over time build to that, and when the actual dollar market has higher daily transaction volumes, that's when I think people will have more and more confidence that will start to translate into savings.
Right. What's interesting to me is that you guys don't really focus on how everyone else approaches the cryptocurrency market, with token and prices. You're very focused on the product, which is really great. But for a lot of listeners here who are probably doing their own startups or trying to, the question I would ask you is, how the hell do you get to make relationships with banks and institutions that you want or you need for your startup to work? Because that's very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's hard, and it takes a lot of time. We've wasted years with banks. And what I will say is, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be a hustler. You need to go out and get stuff. No one's going to give you anything. No one's going to give you an intro. You have to go out and make the connections. And then there are tools in which you can do it. LinkedIn is probably the most useful tool. People will respond to LinkedIn mails, especially if you can write them in a way that interests someone. But you need to be aggressive in your conversations and in your pursuit. And the term, the word cockroach is thrown out a lot.
What word?
Cockroach.
Cockroach. Right.
And it essentially refers to someone, typically an entrepreneur, that just will never die. That they'll always fight through all of the ups and downs that come with running an early stage company. And I can tell you from experience, things will fall apart, things will look helpless, and it may seem that you're on your last leg. But your ability to just be a cockroach and then hustle your way out can be the difference between going under and then, having a successful company or a successful exit. No matter what, you're going to run into, it's certain that you're going to run into some wall or some roadblock or something that is going to make everything that you've done seem worthless. And if you can't spin your way out of that, if you can't fight through that, then you may not want to be an entrepreneur. It's not easy. It's not glamorous.
Right. So what was that moment for you? Was it your last startup that you felt like the most bottom?
No.
Right.
No, it's not my last startup where that was. Although within that, it's not something that happens at the end of a startup. It's especially if you have those cockroach behaviors. Yeah. If you do it well, it should happen. It may happen several times within the company that you're still working for, and you're hopefully have now escaped the worst times and are trajectorying or on an upward trajectory. I don't want to detail the ones that we've been through with Walla, but I can tell you that we've had several of them, and we've fought through those. We've stuck it out. We've scratched and clawed our way out of what seemed like the end of our time.
So seemingly, from an outside perspective, I might think that usually, or in most cases, what really would put a CEO or the entire startup under pressure is funding. But is that true, or is there other things that really you have seen over the years that actually even bother you? That probably even funding isn't that big of a problem sometimes?
Yeah, funding is probably the CEO's biggest worry at, just constantly, right? Like, where are we and how much capital we have? But it's not just funding for funding's sake. Right. It's funding for a purpose, right? So you go out and get funding to get you to a point, to accomplish some goals, hit some milestones, where you can justify going out and getting more funding, right? So for instance, if you take seed capital, this is generalized. Seed capital, let's say that you've created an MVP, so the goal for that seed capital is to create the full version of the product, and then get to some number of users that are generating some revenue and are demonstrating that this product is working, even though you're obviously nowhere close to profitable, and there's still a bunch of uncertainty. So I've accomplished these goals in this time period with this funding. So now I want to go out and get the next round of funding that is going to be used to, we'll say, get the next big batch of users and show that our value per user is increasing and the product is good. We've improved the product. We're doing these things, and then you go out for the next round of funding. Now, what that means, though, is that it's not funding for funding's sake. Right. It's, we have raised funding. I'm going to need to raise funding again soon, or I need to start raising funding again soon, or right now. But we don't have a product, or we don't have a partner that we desperately depend on, or we don't have any users. So no one's going to give me any funding if I need those three things and I don't have any of them, or I have two of those three things and one is just looking really bad.
But you have still raised a couple of rounds of funding, But what do you think people give you money?
I think it's because, people give us money at different points, right? So no one just gives you money in a vacuum. They give you money at the state of your company. So when they gave us money early on, it may have been at the earliest point. It could have been just because in faith in the team, and general interest in the problem. And then the next time someone gave us money, it may have been because they had seen we had really found a way to get distribution to work, because we built this massive community online. And then later it was probably business model and opportunity, and then now it's product, users, and a whole combination of things. And so you see over time these things change. Maybe 1 or 2 rounds from now it'll be not only product and users, but revenue and the path to profitability. Or so these things change over time. The reasons you get money changes over.
But I'm sure you built the team before you managed to even raise the first round of funding or your seed capital.
We weren't able, so the team grows over time. So we didn't have a full team. We had a couple team members. So we had 2 co-founders.
Who were developers themselves?
No, we're non-technical co-founders. So at that time, it was people putting money in, just betting on the entrepreneurs.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
What do you think was that? Why did someone give you money?
I think I think you demonstrate passion. You demonstrate. I would say a competence, an ability to think through and diagnose and have a vision for what you're trying to get to. So really, that's all you have at that point. You have your vision.
Yeah.
That's and I think that especially at that early stage, people are just betting on that founder and their ability to achieve a vision or work through that vision over time to figure out how to make this work. I think it's probably a 99% investment in that, in an expectation that founder can do something.
How do you think VCs spot that? Or if someone had to come to you asking for like as little as $10,000, how would you see those things within someone yourself?
I think at that stage you're typically going after angel investors. Typically a VC won't come in that early with money. It depends on the VC. I mean, there are seed stage VCs, but I would venture to guess that even at seed stage, VCs expect product and then users and then even maybe some revenue.
Yeah.
But our first stages, and stages that I'm describing, are typically one-on-one with angel investors, so potentially high net worth individuals or people that just make a lot of personal investments in startups.
But would you recommend those people know you personally? Like you go to people that actually know you?
I mean, if you can, yes. But again, this is part of the hustle. So you have to go out and find these people. And in going out and sharing your vision with people. And again, this touches a point that is probably worth laying out there. If you're talking to someone about your startup idea, do not have them sign an NDA because your idea is worthless.
Right.
I don't care how good of an idea it is. If you don't start actually building and executing on it, there's no value behind it. But anyway, so you need to get out there and you need to talk to people about what you want to build. You need to find, you need to get into the networks and find people that can introduce you to angel investors that might be interested in what you're working on and who you are. Perhaps someone will intro you to an angel because they like the space, they like the potential, or they might like the space, they might like your vision, but when you meet with that person, they're only going to decide to invest in you if they really like you. And part of that, an extension of that is your vision, but it really is an evaluation on you as the entrepreneur.
Right. And for you, where do you think this is going to go? Do you think of selling one day, or this is your baby that you want to ride for a couple of years?
So the answer to that is yes. There will be some sort of sale, although we have investors, and so we will want some liquidity event to be able to allow them to see the return on their value,
Sure.
on their investment. But regardless, even if there was some sort of sale, that doesn't require that we no longer work on this. It could just be a better opportunity and a better environment to grow this, or especially if it's the right type of acquirer or the right type of partner that could supercharge the product and expand its reach. So for us, those thoughts are, they're so far into the future that it's not even worth dreaming about. All we're doing is focusing on our product and trying to do whatever we can to better service our customers.
Right. And what other countries have you seen that I think before we started recording, we were talking about, you said something along the lines of the skills that you sort of gain in South Africa or your experience here are not entirely applicable within the continent somewhere else.
Yeah, so the product currently has the most function in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Uganda. Uganda is our primary market right now because that's where we've seen the most activity. But the comment that I was making was about South Africa, and it's an incredibly valuable market given the size of the population, the size of the economy, the development of the economy. But at the same time, we're trying to be a solution that services, that is global, that services the entire continent, has reach across the world, especially in emerging markets. And South Africa is probably closer to developed markets than emerging markets. And so my comment was that learnings that we might get from being live in South Africa will do very little to translate across the rest of the continent, whereas Uganda is probably more similar to the average African country.
Yes. That's very interesting, and that's a very, very good point, because I see a lot of entrepreneurs here, they talk about, well, when we do this here, it works in South Africa, we're just going to take it and we go to X country, talking about a different country here. And Howard Stein, the CEO of the company we were talking about earlier, Slide, he was talking about the same thing, like South Africa is very, very different from other African countries. But anyway, lastly, when you're pivoting, because you guys have went through I don't know how many pivots, but you spoke of one here. How it shows how you are not always married to your idea, because I think a lot of people get too passionate about what they initially thought that they would ignore the data and to pivot into something that makes more sense, and then they just want to keep it exactly what they thought. What's your approach to that kind of thinking when you're trying to change direction?
Yeah, you should be, if you're an entrepreneur, find the problem. Mm-hmm. Don't find a solution. Don't find an idea.
Right.
The problem will inform your mission, hopefully, if you do it properly. Mm-hmm. And then the problem will help you find ideas, find potential solutions. And then you'll build those and you try those. But what's ultimately going to happen is your ideas are going to be wrong. The way that you build your product is going to be wrong. As long as you do the proper work up front in validating that there is a big enough problem that needs solving, then you'll still be able to survive and pivot along the way. So from the start, make sure you find the why, the strong enough why, that allows you to figure out what you're building and what you need to build and how you need to build it. Because as long as you have a really strong why that guides you and that you stick to, then you won't have issues cycling through the different whats and hows to find the right combination that solve that why. That should be the guiding star, and as long as you listen to your customers, that you accept, that you gather data and you listen to data and you accept what the data is telling you, then you'll be able to move through the different pivots, the different designs, different solutions that eventually help you find.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. That's amazing. How does one become a cockroach?
Find something that you're passionate about.
Okay.
Passion is the best thing, because if you're passionate about the problem, then it'll motivate you to fight through all the times where you feel like everything is just kicking you down.
So should you be passionate about entrepreneurship or a certain venture?
Passion, neither. Be passionate about the problem that you're solving for the people that you're solving them for.
Okay, but then if you're done with one startup, you're moving to another one. That's a different type of cockroach, also.
You can find a new find a new passion.
Right.
You can find a new problem that is worth being passionate about as well.
Oh.
So remember, when we started, I wasn't passionate about this. I didn't know about this problem.
Mm-hmm.
I built my passion over time, which enables me to become a cockroach in those times of need.
Mm-hmm.
So you can build passion towards something as well, but again, make it passionate about solving a problem. Don't make it passionate about an idea or a solution like we just talked about.
Right, awesome. Samir, this was amazing, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Cool. Great cop.
Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you. Quickly, if you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive.